Our first reader is Sunyi Dean. Sunyi Dean is an autistic author of fantasy fiction. Originally born in the States and raised in Hong Kong, she now lives in Yorkshire with her children. When not reading, running, falling over in yoga, or rolling D20s, she sometimes escapes the city to wild swim in lonely dales. Sunyi, take it away.
Hi, I'm Sunyi Dean. I'm the author of The Book Eaters, and today I'm going to read you a part of my debut novel from a yet-to-be-released special edition, which is very shiny. And as part of this event, I'm giving away a signed personalized copy of The Book Eaters. It's your choice of the UK or the USA cover. I do post internationally. To enter, just send an email to dean.sunyi@gmail.com and mention the Strong Women Strange Worlds event, and I'll draw a name at random. And what I'm about to read is a part of the opening chapter to The Book Eaters. In it, you're introduced to a woman named Devon, whose 5-year-old son suffers from a particular and horrifying hunger for human minds, forcing her to seek out victims for him to consume. Right. And Devon fished out a set of keys hanging around her neck on a lanyard. The cord was entangled with a compass and a steel chain. She shook the lanyard free, slotted the key in, and wrestled briefly with the lock before stepping inside. Since neither she nor her son required light, the flat sat in perpetual dark. It saved on the energy meter and reminded her a little of home, back when home had been welcoming, the cool, unlit calm of Fairweather Manor with its shade-tinted hallways and shadow-layered libraries. She was expecting human company, though, and switched on all the lights. Cheap bulbs flickered into anemic existence. The flat contained only a claustrophobic living space, a small kitchenette with a fold-out table, a bathroom veering off to the left, and a locked bedroom to the right, where her son spent much of every day. She dropped her bag by the door, hung her coat on a hook, and clunked across to his room. "Kai, are you awake?" Silence, and then the faintest of shuffles within. "No lotion, sorry," she said. "They were out. I'll get some tomorrow, eh?" The shuffling stopped. Always she was tempted to go in and offer comfort of some kind. By the 3-week mark, starvation would have ravaged him to thinness, his suffering spiraling into unbearable agonies as his body began to produce toxins. The madness already gnawed at his mind, incurable except through his next feed, and even after feeding, the craving would remain ever present. He would either sit in a corner, huddled up and unresponsive, or else attack her in a frothing rage. Impossible to know which reaction she'd get, and so, fingers shaking, she checked and double-checked the bolts instead of going in. One on top and one on the bottom, both solid things she'd installed herself, and one regular lock that required a key. The room had no window, courtesy of its awkward layout. No additional security needed there, for once. Someone knocked at the entrance to her flat. She jumped, felt chagrined, checked her watch. 8:10, just on time. Just as well she'd not gone back for the lotion. Devon went to let in her guest. He had a name, but she would not allow herself to think it. Better to consider only his role, his profession, the local vicar. He needed to be no more, no less. The vicar waited anxiously on her doorstep, wearing a black and mustard coat that might have been fashionable 40 years ago. He had kind eyes, a quiet demeanor, and impressive patience with his quarrelsome congregation. No severe personal problems that she could find after 2 weeks of intensive stalking. Everyone had small vices and little problems always, but that was a given, and she could cope with the small stuff. They were only human, after all. "Thanks for coming." Devon hunched herself smaller. Be uneasy, be reluctant, and above all, be vulnerable. A surefire act that suckered them every time. "I didn't think you would." "Not at all," he offered a smile. "As I told you on Sunday, it's no trouble." Devon said nothing, looking sheepish. She'd done this conversation or some variation of it so many times, tried all kinds of lines, and found it better to let them to take the initiative. Probably she should have put on something more feminine to look even more unthreatening, but she despised dresses. "May I come in?" he ventured, and she feigned embarrassment for her rudeness, stepping aside. His gaze snagged on the dilapidated interior. Devon couldn't blame him. She gave the usual awkward apologies for the state of the flat, while he gave the usual demurring reassurances. That ritual completed, she said, "My son is in a bad way. I spoke to him earlier and he didn't answer. You may not have much luck, I'm afraid. The vicar nodded, lips pursed with concern. If you are happy for me to try, I will see if I can speak to him. Devon held back a contemptuous laugh, as if talking could solve problems like this. It wasn't the vicar's fault. She'd been the one to say that Kai had depression, but hysteria crept up on her nonetheless. The vicar was still awaiting a response. She managed to nod, hoping he read her emotions for the right kind of conflicted, and led him to the door. You lock your son in his room? He sounded shocked, and she could feel the weight of his judgment as she undid each bolt. No doubt he thought she had something to do with Kai's present mental state. If only he knew. It's complicated. Devon turned the key and paused, aware her heart was racing. I need to ask you something. What is it? The vicar was wary, his senses alert to a danger that his eyes could not perceive. Didn't matter. He'd been lost the moment he stepped inside. She met his gaze. Are you a good person? The question that consumed her every time, every victim. Are you kind? He frowned, considering his words, trying to understand what reassurance she sought, not that he had a cat's chance in hell of guessing. Still, his hesitation was his own reassurance. Only those with a conscience would stop and evaluate her question. None of us are truly good, the vicar said at last. He put a hand on her shoulder so gently, so kindly, and she almost threw up on the spot. All we can do is live by the light we're given. Some of us don't have any light, Devon said. How are we supposed to live then? He blinked. Devon caught his wrist, wrenched the door open, and shoved him in. The vicar wasn't frail, but Devon was far stronger than she looked and had the element of surprise. He stumbled forward, startled and gasping, into the darkness of Kai's room. Devon yanked the door shut and held it hard. I'm so sorry, she said through the keyhole. I'm just doing the best I can. The vicar didn't answer. He was already shouting and thrashing. Really, it was pointless to apologize. Victims didn't want your sorry so sorries when you were hurting them. They wanted you to stop. Devon couldn't oblige, though, and apologies were all she had these days. Apologies and booze. The noise of the vicar's muffled struggling trickled away in a minute or less. She could never decide which was worse, the wailing or the silence. Maybe they were equally bad. She let go of the doorknob. No point locking up. Kai wouldn't be dangerous, not anymore. Better to make sure he could leave his room if he wished. The flat seemed to oppress, its mildewed walls crushing her spirit to flatness. After so many days of ravenous hunger, her son would need to sleep off his feed. In the meantime, she wanted a drink, and there was no vodka in the house. No, wait, she had half a bottle of whiskey left behind by the previous person she brought to her home. Devon didn't like whiskey, but right now she liked being sober even less. A couple minutes rifling through the cabinets turned up the errant alcohol. Bottle in hand, Devon locked herself in the tiny, dingy bathroom and drank into oblivion. And that's me done, sorry. It's not a very bleak reading.